Hello, and welcome to a Cloud Developer channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about Data Developer channel. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about data deduplication on Microsoft's ReFS or Resilient File System. Now, this is a new capability Microsoft has released in their newest version of Windows Server 1709, which is Microsoft's new operating system SKU that is going to have a much faster update cycle. Basically, they're planning to actually update it twice a year, which is spring and fall, and they have a long-term servicing channel, which is going to be 2 to 3 years. And it's a little bit different than the Windows 2016 edition, where it's going to be updated in a more traditional manner and have a different support or release process. So one of the new capabilities that they are releasing with this resilient file system, and I'm hoping is going to come to Windows 2016 as well, is this ability to now enable data deduplication on the ReFS file system. Now, if you're interested in actually learning about the ReFS file system and the benefits that it brings, you can go ahead and go to Google and search for Microsoft ReFS, and you'll get a link to an article on the Microsoft's docs page. Basically, it talks about some of the key benefits for using or leveraging the ReFS file system. One of the prime benefits or the key benefits of using this is actually in the virtualization space, especially if you're using Hyper-V. But it also has other uses for things like if you have a lot of files and a lot of the files end up being the same, even files being slightly different, but if they contain a lot of the same or similar type of data, ReFS, specifically the deduplication functionality, is actually able to optimize how the bytes are actually used and stored on the actual physical disk. So, and the end result ends up being that you end up saving quite a bit of space. So let me go ahead and show you how to actually get it installed and configured, and we'll do a quick demo to see the actual benefits of the file size savings that you'll end up getting. So I'll go ahead and actually bring up my test server that I have. This is actually Windows Server 1709, and it only comes in the core edition, which basically means that you only have the command line type of access to it. So there is no user interface like you would have with a Windows 2016 GUI edition. So this is similar to Windows Server Core deployment. So I'll go ahead and log in using my account, and we'll go ahead and open up PowerShell. So the first thing what we're going to do here is we're going to actually go ahead and take a look at the disks that we have available. So we can do that by typing in get disk, and we'll see that in here I should have two disks. One is going to be representing my C drive, the other one is going to be the other drive that I'm going to be using for testing and for this demo. So here you can see that the second disk is offline, and the first step we want to take is go ahead and actually get that enabled. So I'll type in get disk. The number for that disk is 1. You can see it right here. And then if we run this, it just gets us that one disk. And then we're going to pipe it to a set disk command. And then here there's a flag that you can basically toggle, which is offline, which is we're going to basically turn it off. So we're going to mark this disk as online. So I'll go ahead and rerun the get disk command, and now you can see before it was offline, and now it says it's online. So that's ready. Actually, another way you can actually take a look at the same information, if you bring up Server Manager, I have the Server Manager running on my actual development server that I'm using to actually connect to the Hyper-V console. But in here, under all servers, I also have this file server configured as well. So since I have it configured here, I can also take a look at the different disks and volumes that are available on that server as well. If I simply go to volumes, we'll see that I have file server, and I still only see C drive. I don't see the other volumes because I didn't create one. So if I wanted to actually take a look at the disks, you'll see that here I see disk 0, just like I saw in PowerShell, and we see that other disk that now is shown online. And then if I wanted to, I should be able to right click and actually go ahead and create a new volume. but I want to actually show you how to do that through PowerShell. So let's do that real quick. So here, since I have the disk already enabled, all I have to do is just run the new volume command. And what we're going to do is we're going to actually type in disk number, and that's going to be disk number 1. The friendly name, basically it's a label, so we're going to give it the label of data. A file system we're going to specify as ReFS. Access path we don't need to set, and a drive letter we're going to set to E. So, and we'll go ahead and run this, and this should actually format the disk and actually make it available for us. So if I go back to the server manager and simply refresh, we'll see that it got initialized and it's ready for us to actually start consuming. So if we go to the volume section, we'll also see that we have this setting here. So now the next step is we want to actually enable deduplication. Again, you can use Server Manager to do this, or if you wanted to, you can use PowerShell. So PowerShell is pretty easy in this case. So we'll just type in get Windows feature, and then we'll do a pipe, and then we'll actually query to get all the different features that are available but not installed. So in order to do that, we'll go ahead and search for install state of equals available, and this will retrieve all the different features that are available, which basically means that they're not installed. If we were to look for installed, it would give us everything that's installed. And the reason why we're doing this is that we need to actually grab the name of the feature for data deduplication. So you can see right here that data deduplication name is fs-data-deduplication. So we'll go ahead and grab that. And actually, the other thing it's going to do is it's going to also install this file server feature. So let's go ahead and run the PowerShell command to go ahead and install this Windows feature. And it is basically install Windows feature. The name, we'll just paste the name. And if you wanted to quickly check to see what other features it might install, you just do -what if. And when you run this, it will actually tell you that it's going to install data deduplication file and iSCSI service. You can't see everything here. If you wanted to actually see it, basically you can do, let's see, do a pipe and then format table, FT, and then dash out of size. So let's see if it actually gives us a little better representation. So yeah, so it adjusted the way that it displays all of it. So now we see that data deduplication, file and iSCSI services, and file server. So now that we've confirmed this, we want to go ahead and run this. I also typically like to specify -restart. This basically will automatically restart the server if that's needed. Now, depending on if you're running this in production or the type of impact that you might have on other team members that you're working with, you might not want to have it automatically reboot. But in my case, I've never had it actually force restart for installing this set of features. So I'll go ahead and run it, and as you can see, it finished already. So I've also noticed that if you had the server manager already up and running, when you're enabling some of those capabilities, it doesn't always pick up on the fact that you have deduplication enabled. So if I rerun this, you can see that deduplication rate and replication savings are actually not showing anything. Sometimes I've even seen it where the columns don't even show up. So I'll go ahead and restart the server manager, and let's take a look to see if it changes anything. So it still hasn't changed anything, and that's because we also need to enable deduplication, not that we've actually installed the feature. So, and the way you do that is now that we have the PowerShell command list as part of our feature, we can run a command for enabling that. Now, let's actually take a look to see what commands are available. So I'll run GCM, which is get command, and we'll do star, and then dedup, and then star. And we'll run this, and it will basically show us all the different commands that are available for deduplication. And you can see that one of them is enable dedup volume. So let's run that. And then we'll give it a path of E drive, which is basically the drive of the volume we actually created. So I'll go ahead and enable that. And let's rerun this and see Okay, so now you can see that it actually showed up, and it's showing a dedupe rate of 0 and dedupe savings of 0. And that's because we don't actually have any files on that server now. So let's go ahead and actually go to D drive on my development machine. And I have this nano server VHDX file, which is one of the prime candidates for this kind of file hosting on ReFS file system, especially with dedupe enabled. So let's go ahead and go to file server and go to that drive. I'll go ahead and create a folder here called VHDs, and I'll just copy that file over here, and we'll give it a moment, and you can see that the file copied over. So now, since we have this, and we just copied the file here, basically dedupe only sees it as though the file just got created, because for all intents and purposes, the file just got created on that folder. So as you can see, this is the current timestamp. Now, if we were to try to actually force deduplication to actually run the optimization process, we wouldn't actually get anything running, and I'll show you why. So in order to take a look at some of the configuration details using PowerShell, you can run this get dedupe metadata, get dedupe properties, dedupe schedule, dedupe status, dedupe volume. These commands will basically give you different types of information about the current state of deduplication on your server. So if we run get dedupe status, and we'll do pipe and then format list and star, this will basically give us all the properties. We'll see that currently it doesn't see any files that could be potentially optimized based on the settings that we have. There's no size associated because there's no files, and a few other things that basically might be useful for you. Let's also take a look at the actual scheduled jobs. Now, scheduled jobs is what's actually being used in order to trigger the optimizations. So if we run get dedupe schedule, in here we'll see 3 different jobs that are scheduled. One is optimization, which is basically what takes a look at all of the different files you have and actually optimizes how they're stored on a physical disk. This is what's actually going to force deduplication to actually lower the actual usage of your physical disks. Then garbage collection is used in order to kind of rescan the file system based on the last state or last execution. And if you have files that got added, removed, things like that, garbage collection will pick up that information. And then when you run optimization, it will basically force the optimization to start using that new information and details in order to actually optimize the utilization of space. And then there's also scrubbing. So as you can see, that optimization is a background optimization activity, and the garbage collection happens at 2:45 a.m. in this case, and it happens on Saturday. So it really only runs weekly. Now, for the purpose of this demo, I'm actually going to change some settings and force it to actually execute more frequently. So in this case, I'll show you another command, which is get dedupe volume. And in here, you'll see a few more settings. Some of those settings are important. So, for example, you can see exclude file types. You can actually tell deduplication to exclude certain file types from optimization period if you know some of them are or should not be optimized, or you don't want them to be optimized. You can also include different file types. There's also an important feature for no compression file types. This is actually used to enforce a feature, basically skip trying to compress files that we know are already compressed. One of the things that deduplication actually will try to do is, if it finds files that that are not in this list, it will actually try to compress them before it actually tries to deduplicate or optimize them using deduplication functionality. So if you want to add those files because maybe there's some zip files or other type of files that that are already compressed, you can add them to this list and not waste CPU cycles for compression, because that can actually lead to performance issues on your file server as well. And then another important thing for the purpose of this demo, there's a feature for minimum file age days. Basically, this will not pick up any files that have been created in the last 3 days. So I'm going to go ahead and actually turn this off by setting it to 0. And this will allow me to actually optimize this file and show you real quick some of the benefits in terms of data utilization. So, and another important thing to know about is the minimum file size that you can set for optimization is actually 32 kilobytes. It's represented in bytes here, but you cannot go lower. So basically, if the files that you have in your file system are less than 32 kilobytes, deduplication will not actually try to run on those files. So just keep that in mind. So here what we're going to do is we know we have volume for E drive, and then I want to change the minimum file age days to 0. So I'll just type in get dedupe volume E drive pipe and then set dedupe volume, and then what I'm going to do is minimum file age days, and I'll set it to 0. So now that we have that, let's run the get status again real quick, and we'll see that the in policy file count is still 0. So what we're going to want to do now is we actually want to run optimization. So if we go here and refresh, you can see that the free space is still 38.1 because our file that we copied over there is almost 600 megabytes. And let's go ahead and actually run a command to tell deduplication to rescan for files that should be available now. So you do that by typing in start dedupe job. Then what we're going to do is we're going to specify the path. And that's going to be E drive. Then we're going to say memory. And this is basically us telling, using percentages, how much of the memory of the server we want to utilize for this particular activity. So in this case, we're saying 100%. And then there's a cores option, basically how many cores do we want to use on this particular server for performing the optimization. And again, it's in percentages, so we'll say 100. Then we'll say priority of high. So go ahead and actually run the optimization as fast as you can. And then the last one is type. And in this case, we want to do garbage collection. And go ahead and run this now. And if we actually bring up the task manager and the performance, you can see that the job has started running, and we can also type in get dedupe job, and you'll see that actually nothing shows up, and that's because it already finished. So the scanning is done. So let's go ahead and run the get dedupe status real quick, and now we can see that in policy file count is increased to 1. So that hasn't actually optimized anything, so that's the next step we're going to execute. And basically all you have to do is just change the type to optimize, and we'll run it again. And then if I run the get dedupe job here, we'll see that the job is actually queued and it's of type optimization. If I run it again, if it starts running, so in this case it started running, you'll see the progress will start updating. So in here, it actually completed. It was pretty quick, and you saw this the spikes in here in the CPU window. That's because it was actually trying to run the optimization. So now, if we go back here into Server Manager and refresh, you'll see that even with a single file, it already chunked that file up into enough smaller chunks and realized that there's actually optimization that can be done. So we've just gained 17% reduction in utilization from that single file. And we have gained 340 megabytes back based on optimization. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but the file is 580 megabytes in size total, and we just recovered 340, which is basically half of that file. Now, where you really gain the benefit is, let's assume you have some of these files that are very similar in nature. So I'll just go ahead and copy some of these files. Basically, it's going to be the same file. And we'll take a look to see what it actually does in terms of space utilization. So I'll just go ahead and create a bunch of copies of the same file on this file share. So we can see that the total file size utilization in this folder is 6.64 gigabytes. If I refresh this view here, you'll see that our data deduplication rate is down to 4, and we see that the utilization is now down by 6.6 gigabytes. So let's go ahead and rerun the command real quick to get the metadata again refreshed, and we'll do that by running the garbage collection. And we'll see that there's a slight increase in utilization that's as it's running the garbage collection, and it actually finished. So now we'll go ahead and run the optimization task, and this should run pretty quickly. And you can see the utilization of our CPUs is actually going up. And I've never really seen it go up too high, but again, I only have a few files in here, and the file server is actually not being utilized that heavily. So I'm sure that if the file size or the count of files on your system actually grows and you get a higher utilization from people actually trying to use this system, you'll actually see higher CPU and memory utilization as well. So, but we can see that the actual job completed. And let's take a look real quick to see what the file savings are. So you can see right now it's free space of 32.2. Data duplication rate is 4%, and then duplication savings is 340 megabytes. So if I refresh this, take a quick look. So we essentially recovered 6.42 gigabytes in space. And if you really look at what it did, is it basically gave us back all of the space based on the amount of files that we had. So we're only essentially leveraging or storing the bits for half of this file. The rest of them, the way that ReFS works and deduplication works, is actually just ends up referencing the same block of storage that has been created on a physical disk. And because everything else is actually the same, all it's doing is just basically creating a quick database that references that same block, so that when people try to access these disks, it will actually access them from the same physical location. So that's the benefit of data deduplication. Now, if you have other files like media files, so if you have MP4s that are compressed or other zip files that are compressed, if you have individual files like that, then you're really not going to gain much from using ReFS and deduplication. Now, if you actually have a lot of duplicates, so if you have a bunch of ISOs that are the same, this is where you're going to start realizing the benefits of doing deduplication, because it's actually going to make intelligent decisions on the same file blocks representing the same data structure. So it'll actually just reference that same block on the physical disk, and everything else will actually just be referencing that. So that's the beauty of deduplication, and it is available in the Windows Server operating system on NTFS, and now it's available on ReFS. And if you have Hyper-V workloads, this is actually, especially in the lab scenario, this is actually very beneficial, because you can end up having many VMs in your lab environment, and if they are based on the same operating system image, you'll end up actually saving easily 10 to 15 gigabytes per your VM, because a lot of the base actual content of your VHD files is actually the same. So I've had this running in my lab environment, and you also gain some performance benefits as well as file utilization and data utilization benefits from this. So if you have any questions about this and any of the content that I covered here, or if you have questions or issues relating to setting this up on your end as well, feel free to put those questions in the comments section below, and I will try to answer them as best as I can. And hopefully in the future videos, I'll show you how to set this up for being used in a Hyper-V environment as well. That's currently something that I don't have configured, and that's primarily because I'm using ReFS for performance benefits on Hyper-V, but up until 1709 of Windows Server, it wasn't available with data deduplication. So I'll be rebuilding my lab infrastructure to actually utilize this and start realizing some of the savings from a file utilization perspective. So hopefully you enjoyed this content, and this was useful for you. And if you have questions, like I said, go ahead and put the comments in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer as best as I can. Have a good day.